Good day, fellow champions of inclusion. I am AA Ron, and this is the Inclusive Dad podcast, where we explore inclusion and make it practical. Before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe, rate, or review the show on your favorite platform. We truly appreciate your feedback and would be honored if you shared the podcast with friends and family who might benefit. If you want to support us in our mission, please click on the link in the show description. Today, my guest is Tracee Garner. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Aaron. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. Why don't
Good.
you start us off by just telling me a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, my name is Tracee Lydia Garner. As you said, I am a best-selling fiction writer, author. I write romantic suspense, and I love creating stories and telling lies for a part of my living. I also have a disability. I have muscular dystrophy, and I use a wheelchair full time. I have since I was in elementary school. It's just something I was born with and diagnosed at age 2 years old. And yeah, I live in Northern Virginia, just outside of the DC area, working full time in my regular job when I'm not writing. I am work on like social human services, helping people find resources in the community at a center for independent living. And
That's great.
that's part of what I do.
That's great. So the first question I ask all my guests is, what is your definition of inclusion?
My definition of inclusion, I feel like it's pretty simple. It's really, make taking steps and I guess precautions to ensure that everybody can participate, but not just ensuring that there's physical, and barriers that are reduced, but actively pursuing people that you want to invite to the table to have the opportunity to have a say. I think that that's one of the things that people leave off. People make things accessible, and more often than not, they believe they're doing all that they can to open the spaces and to reduce barriers. But sometimes people don't actively pursue the people you wanted. The reason why you reduce the barriers was so everybody can participate, but
Mm-hmm.
there's like a step off of, well, we're not going to tell them about it, we're not going to advertise, and we're not going to actively seek them to include them. So I think that it's not just about barriers. Mental, physical, attitudinal barriers are a major issue
Mm-hmm.
that I think we don't talk about enough. But actively pursuing people to invite them and to make it possible for them to come and attend things.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like that addition to the definition, just because you can make it accessible, but if they don't know about it, then they're not going to come anyway. So that's a great. I like that piece
Hmm.
of it.
Hmm. Yeah.
Has that always kind of been your definition, or has it changed over time?
I think it's changed over time. Probably, I would say, because of one of my job responsibilities when I was first hired at my Center for Independent Living. I was outreach coordinator. And so here we had a new satellite office that I was hired for, and they were like, here, do outreach. And I was like, okay, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I just kind of cut my teeth on going to all the other human services, all the other organizations, and then business. It's I think one thing, especially in human services, social services, that we don't do, we just reach out to our sister organizations. And that's wonderful and good, but most of them are already catering to the needs of the, most at-risk populations. And so we have to include corporate, non-governmental offices, and outreach is really, about really reaching beyond your little circle. And so I really had to develop an outreach plan. And now people tell me like, oh my God, everybody knows about this particular organization that you're with. Everybody knows you, and
Right.
and so I always feel good about that. I was like, well, are you tired of me, or is this a good thing?
Right.
So I just think that hearing that, yeah, you have a really good, model for the outreach has been a really good thing. But a lot of people are only kind of reaching to their own kind, if you
Sure.
will, and that's a problem.
Yeah. So how about you? Have you always been included?
Definitely not. In fact, I'm actually reminded of my disability when I have that rejection factor, when I can't go to some place, can't go to someone's house for the holiday party,
Mm-hmm.
when they really should be having, a public party in spaces that are more accessible, like at a
Right.
restaurant or a community center. So I actually still to this day, I'm nearing, 50 years old in like 2 years. Just it really gets me down when I want to participate in something and I just can't. And I also had a long time of speaking up for, people would think that I'm like this, wonderful advocate, and I am. But at times, I think people don't realize when advocacy gets really exhausting. Like sometimes you have to fight for things that you feel and believe people should already be aware of.
Right.
In fact, I was leading an organization of writers, and I was actually president for 2 years. And, I said, no more at home parties. First of all, a lot of people feel excluded when they're at somebody's actual house. And it's supposed to be a very inclusive environment. There's always little cliques that happen because you know that person. And so you want to sometimes get on neutral ground, especially for a public organization. And so just the other day, I was looking, the organization is now under new leadership, and they have gone back to somebody's house for a upcoming party. And I have to struggle with, do I say something? I thought we already been through this.
Right.
I mentioned this the last time I was actually president and tried to instill some protocols and rules about,
Yeah.
not meeting at people's houses or ensuring the house is accessible. Yes, there are some accessible houses, but most of them have steps or
Right.
things that even, and it's not even about me being in a wheelchair. There are other people with canes and walkers and crutches, that also can't access. So,
Yeah.
advocacy is just so exhausting. I wish people understood. Do I have to bring this up again? Do you have to cancel the event? And then,
Right.
people don't realize that everybody frowns on you because why is it canceled? Oh, so and so can't participate. Oh my God, again, are they even coming? Like that
Right.
should not be a discussion. And that's part of the attitudinal stuff that comes.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, my story is I have a daughter, Cecilia. She's just turned 22. Uses a wheelchair, so yeah, a lot of stuff you're talking about, accessible parties, spaces that we face that a lot too. And it's just, yeah, if you're gonna have a party and it's not an accessible place, I mean, then you don't want us there apparently because we can't get in the building. So then I'm not able to
Mm-hmm.
come. So yeah, that makes. And you're right. The other part you said that was I agree with is that advocacy is tiring. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of my stories about school stuff, and it's like every year we're bringing up the same thing, and you're like, do I want to
Same
keep
thing.
bringing it up again? Is it worth saying it? I'm
Mm-hmm.
sick of saying it. So that a lot of that makes sense too, for sure.
Right.
Can you talk about the climate for people with disabilities and what current pressing issues do you face?
Yeah, I think that, the issues have been the same for like, years, probably even a century now. But just the employment, the access to health care, what I would really like to work on that I just sometimes don't have the bandwidth for, but it's actually a perfect time considering the political climate is, more access for people who have mobility issues and really everybody, people who are blind, people who are deaf, to have more access in getting the proper screenings. When I'm talking about, I'm thinking specifically of OGBYN. Is it OGBYN? What is it? Gynecologist. Anyway, I'm losing my word salad, my letters, but going to see the gynecologist,
Yeah.
having a lift in place, a Hoyer lift, to like, I really wanted to do something where you could like phone a lift, where you could reserve, a person, maybe a nurse, a skilled
Sure.
nurse, who has experience working with people with disabilities, and the Hoyer lift to have ready for your appointment. And then
Right.
just doctors and nurses and gynecologists who understand the care and the apprehension you have at kind of, getting up on the table and, doing
Mm-hmm.
that kinds of things. Those are very personal things that we're still
Right.
not there yet. We have done a lot of accessibility, a lot of attitudinal shifts, a lot of awareness and education, but going to get those life-saving early detection things are still what's lacking. And I just wish I had more time, more energy to work on it. But like I said, healthcare, employment, just more things, more supports. In-home care is obviously an issue. I currently have someone who is a couple of actually immigrants that work for me, and
Mm-hmm.
can provide skilled care, just a pathway for them to get the right cards and licenses that they need to be able to work legally in the United States. And we have
Right.
such a high, immigration population, and we are not training them. We're basically letting them sit, do nothing, not giving them job skills that they could then deploy in some of the industries like home health care that are lacking a good workforce. The applicant pool, I'm
Yeah.
always begging for caregivers every single day. Somebody can't show up, I need a backup in order to get up and live my life. And when there's a whole pool of people that can fulfill these jobs, we should be employing them. We should be training them.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. My daughter, she requires somebody with her all the time to help with daily living tasks and that kind of stuff. So yeah, the helper or the PCA, um, that's definitely a big thing. And yeah, if there's people out there that can fill those roles, we should allow them to do that for sure. You brought up an interesting point about doctor visits. I hadn't thought about that, but before, because I usually go with to my daughter's appointments. Not she, I haven't
Mhm.
gone with her to a gynecology appointment, but just if going there, like the way she gets up on the table, if they want her up there, is I'm probably the one lifting her up there. So I never thought of that before. How there's if I can't do it, how is she going to get up there? So that's interesting.
Yeah, and exactly.
That's
And the other
interesting.
thing is that, we she needs really a caregiver. I don't want to get into the relationship thing, but
Yeah,
it's just probably be dignifying not to have your
yeah,
dad, help
right.
you. I mean,
Yes,
my dad had to help me too before he passed
yep,
away, but at some point as you're growing into your womanhood,
yeah,
oh, dad, here we go again. Okay, this is embarrassing. I
yeah,
mean,
for
it's
sure.
just all around thinking about the dignifying part. And and it's okay because you're close and you're your family, but at some
Yeah,
point, that people are going to be more independent,
yeah,
and the support should be in place. This isn't about you and
right,
and your daughter per se. It's just that the stuff should be there to
right.
support people for what they want to do independently.
Yeah, for sure. How can parents be more aware about raising a child with special needs, and what do they need to understand?
I think that mostly parents need to understand, like I said, I'm almost 50 years old. And I think that even when you live at home or share a house with your parent, you have to really establish some boundaries. You're
Mm-hmm.
by your parents, you'll always be viewed as a child who may lack discernment or decision making skills. And I still go through that even to this day of I have a really hard time sometimes with just being second guessed. Like sometimes that causes me to doubt myself, doubt
Mm-hmm.
the decision that I'm making. And then at the end, I'm like, wow, I should have just stuck to my guns. I should have not been swayed by something, your mother or your father might have said. And I
Right.
think that parents really need to learn more about, self autonomy, self direction for their child, and kind of be like, let's have an advice session, let's have a
Mm-hmm.
little meeting, but then you go and you make what you feel is the best decision, even if it's wrong. One of the things of the independent living movement is we
Mm-hmm.
don't get to say
Right.
as the peer counselor, oh, I don't think you should do that because you're probably going to be rejected and it's going to hurt and then you're going to be depressed. And
Right.
remember what happened the last time? Like there shouldn't be any of that. It should be really, well, here's the pros and cons. Help me work out a list and then let me go on my own way and
Yep.
decide what I'm going to do. So you actually never get out of that with your parents. But at some point, I think parents could be a little bit more, um, just pushing the person. My parents push me,
Right.
and sometimes I hated it. But as you get older, you really want to lead your own life, do your own thing, and make decisions, even if they're bad.
Right. That's all great stuff. How do you think people in our society need to change their view about people with disabilities?
One thing I wish we really stopped doing, especially doctors and then parents, sometimes encouraging people to receive government benefits when they have work trial periods, and the work trial periods go great. But I've seen a lot of parents kind of like stop their kids from working because of the fear of losing the benefits when there are great benefits to be had with
Hmm.
gainful employment. Social Security is really not even thinking about disability. I tell people all the time because I do a lot of Social Security applications, but
Yep.
it's not even really about the ability to work, it's the ability to earn money. So, I know several people who can have, really good, legitimate jobs with actual benefits. But because the parents are so afraid of losing the health care, the Medicaid, Medicare
Right.
benefits, they actually keep them from working. So now you have an
Right.
adult child who's sitting home. And I'm not talking about people with severe disabilities. I'm just talking about people who,
Hmm.
may be like me, but have a parent who's kind of tightly holding the reins, believes that you can't make beyond the Social Security amount that
Hmm.
you're making, which you may be able to with some support, with some
Yep.
job coaching, and with just check-ins with a job coach. So just kind of sometimes some people, and especially some cultures, really limiting what they believe their child can do based on fear and based on not really believing that the child can actually make it.
Right. In your experience, what benefits do you see with somebody in that situation when they've taken the made the choice to get a job? I mean, how what benefits to them do you see when that happens?
Oh my gosh, there's so many benefits to, outside gainful employment. One is just the after, falls, which is a leading cause of death. It's not the fall, it's what happens after the care that you receive, going to rehabilitation. But like that, the second or probably the third, or even in the top five, I'm not sure. I don't want to misquote
Mm.
myself, but is isolation and loneliness. That is the next kind of epidemic that we have. And some of that can be mitigated by having employment to go to every day. You have friends, you're getting out of your house, you're getting fresh air for your health, you're doing something that you enjoy, that it occupies your time for anywhere from 4 to 8 hours a day, at least, 4 or 5, for some even people, 6 days a week, even if it's not that much, even 3 days a week to get out of the house. You may be navigating community resources. You may be learning to use the public and paratransit system, the one that goes door to door to your house. We have Metro
Hmm.
Access here, is what the paratransit system is called.
Yep.
And I'm sure they're all different versions of that. But calling them, speaking up for yourself, and then meeting other people in the public. I mean, I could go on and on about some of the benefits that are, but just having something to do every day, so you're not staying home, playing
Yep.
video games, watching TV, ad nauseum, but really just out in the community, taking advantage of the resources, and then being taxed. We all hate taxes, but to be taxed means you have something that you are doing to be taxed for. So
Right.
we shouldn't say, I've been learning through like mindfulness practices and things of late, but I don't have to pay taxes, I get to pay taxes, right?
Hmm.
I mean, just reframing your thought.
Reframing. Yep.
I get to go to work. I'm gainfully employed. I have something that's dignifying. And depending on what the work is, I'm making a difference. It's interesting. Just on and on and on with the thing. But the most important thing is that isolation and
Right.
not kind of mind numbing video games and television that you can watch all day and not do things.
Yeah, for sure. What are some of the biggest hurdles you've encountered in your life?
Wow, the biggest hurdles I've encountered in my life probably would be around employment, all the things that I talked about that are still difficult for people with disabilities.
Sure.
Finding caregivers in the pandemic was extremely difficult.
Mm-hmm.
They really dried up, and then all of them went up exponentially on their hourly rate.
Okay.
Some were making $17 to $20 an hour, and in the pandemic, they could command anywhere from 30. Someone even told me they weren't even going to come unless it was $100 a day.
Wow.
And it's like, I don't even need $100 a day worth of services.
Right.
I need 2 to 4 hours in the morning and a little bit less in the evening just to get up, get going, get my day done, and then go to sleep.
Right.
So, and then those pricing didn't go down. Even though the pandemic isn't as prevalent, it's still around, make no
Sure.
mistake, but they were able to keep their pricing high just because the industry, kind of eradicated so many people, so many available people where they could command the amount, and they're going to go to somebody who can pay more. The access to healthcare, the access to getting the screenings, and then just, getting promoted at my place of employment in the various jobs that I've had. Promotion is such an issue for a lot of people, but it's definitely been an issue for me, really fighting for that, and then finding the right types of supervisors and bosses who who encourage you to learn more, do more, and then be rewarded in your salary for what you're doing. So just being,
Yeah.
overlooked sometimes in the promotion arena for your jobs and different things that you do for employment.
Cool. That's great. How would you say your parents or upbringing environment affected your attitude about your disability and life in general?
One of the things I write about in my book, Disability, a field guide, an anecdotal field guide for the rest of us, is that I remember the news of my disability, but I don't remember them having any sort of good or bad reaction. Throughout my whole life, they've been pretty even keel. They never said, well, you're different or you're special or you got to do
Sure.
this or
Right.
that. And I just credit them for having such an upbeat attitude, for letting me do regular things. There were a couple things I got fought on, like using the metro for the first time, the metro rail, to get into DC. I mean,
Sure.
and also traveling. My mother really fought me on traveling for the first time to Costa Rica when I went with Mobility International USA, which is an organization that makes travel possible for people with disabilities. So
Okay.
yeah, I did get fought on some of those things, but you have to chalk it up that they care and they are scared about your safety. But as far as them reacting to the actual disability diagnosis, I do remember even the doctor saying that I wouldn't be able to use my hands to type and to write that much,
Okay.
which is so funny because I've written 20 books. And
Right.
the way we think of writing is not the actual way we write anymore. There's
Yeah.
dictation too.
For sure.
I do use my hands and I can still type about 90 words a minute, but just that the muscular dystrophy would kind of overtake me or ravish my body or something
Yeah.
like that, which does happen, but has not necessarily happened to me. I mean, obviously, I still use a wheelchair. It's had some impact,
Yep.
but you just have to be careful the things you let them put in your mind
Right.
and in your spirit about what your prognosis is going to be.
Yeah. For sure. So when did you start all of your writing stuff, or how did that start?
That actually started from depression. I
Okay.
wrote my first book in college. I was talking about those hard experiences, rejected by the opposite sex, and also rejected by bad grades in my math for liberal arts class. So when math was going on and the teacher was talking, I disappeared into my own world, wrote my first story on my notebook paper, and I would also type my book in the computer lab at the time.
Awesome.
They don't have
Yeah.
computer labs anymore because everybody has a computer. But
Yep.
during my day, back in the
Yep.
1900s, I had used a computer lab and would type my book whenever I had a chance to go to the computer lab in between classes.
Sure.
And I entered my first book that I wrote, which was a novella, into a contest, and I won that contest and got
Oh wow. That's
an
awesome.
advance, a trip to New York, and obviously publication. So that's what
That's great.
really changed my life and helped me start writing. My first book came out in 2001, and I've been writing ever since that life changing event.
That's great. So are the characters in your books, do they have disabilities or?
They do. Some of them
Okay.
do. I have a character who has vitiligo, which is what Michael Jackson
Okay.
had,
Sure.
and I have one who had heart problems. And so, yeah, I have given some characters disabilities. I didn't really start doing that right off the bat. The whole
Okay.
point of, as a writer with a disability, it was part escapism. So I didn't
Okay.
want to always bring my own personal problems
Yep.
into the books, but then later as disability and having a voice and telling stories and depicting people with actual issues that are real
Hmm.
life became more of a thing, then yes, I began to add more characters with disabilities into my work. But it still won't be the majority of what I write, just because I want to escape too.
Right.
Sometimes, I'm not one of these people that pretends that disability is wonderful all the time. That there are some really, hard times throughout your life, especially as you get older. As I age, some of the issues that come along with age are complicated by the appearance of a disability or the prevalence of a disability. So I love writing for the escapism, and I don't always want to be bogged down in awareness and education. Um, you will get some anyway through my books, but it won't always be around disability topics and
Yeah.
issues.
Any talk about turning one of your books into a movie?
I wish it's on my vision board. It's on the list that I make every year. A
Yeah.
Lifetime movie, or like when I was a kid, the CBS Sunday night movie
There you go.
made for
Yep.
television.
Yep.
So I love those. Definitely Netflix, or there's just so many streaming platforms now that it's
Right.
actually getting easier to get a movie made. And yeah, from your lips to God's ears, we will see
There
one
we go.
day.
That's great. What is one tip you can share to help the listeners be more inclusive today? So something that you don't have to pay money for, it's not complicated, just something simple to be more inclusive.
I would say just, friends can speak up. Even if you're not affected by disability, you are a friend, you are a fellow parent to someone who is. And ask them, what can I do? How can I help you? So many people and families with disabilities don't reach out. And then some have a wonderful network of people that can watch their child with disabilities, or, take them for the day. What can you do more to ask questions and to get involved, and, to stop really acting like that's not your problem, or you don't have to deal with that. That's not your child, that's
Sure.
not your friend with a disability. I think that anyone who's a supporter, advocate, or friend can do more and can help out more. And I also encourage people to read, people that are not disabled, to read my book on disability, because there may be some tidbits and helpful hints that you can support the families that you know. And that will be more inclusive right there. Get
Yeah.
other people with disabilities around your non disabled child.
Right.
Take them places. Don't shun them from asking questions of people with disabilities, and just be regular, be inclusive, and strive to keep that going in every facet of your life, not just when it counts or when there's a special program, but in other smaller ways too.
Yeah. That's great. Is there anything you want to talk about that we haven't discussed yet?
I can't think of anything.
Yeah,
Nope,
we covered
not
a lot of
really.
stuff.
We did. I do love writing romance. I am a book coach. So anyone who has feels like they have a book in them, whether that's
Okay.
fiction or nonfiction, I'd love to talk with them, and then happy to help them
Sure.
reach their goal of publication and get their book out there. I think there's a book in everybody. I think there's a book in you
Yeah.
too, if you haven't already written one or haven't started one about your journey with your daughter, or even just whatever else you want to
Yeah.
write about, any hobbies or interests you have. So I love helping and encouraging aspiring writers to finish
Okay.
and publish their books.
Awesome. Ready for the last question?
Sure.
Do you like spam? Yes or no?
No.
No. Yeah, I asked that question because I live in Austin, Minnesota, where they make spam and where the spam museum is located. So it's
I will say though that if you fry it, I like it a little bit better than if you just eat it
yeah,
regularly. It tastes a little better. But also, spam has so much sodium.
yeah,
And
it
I hate
does
to be health conscious, but I have heart problems. I don't need any more sodium than I can handle. So
yeah,
you have to be careful about that. A lot
for
of
sure.
water retention, but people have done some really creative things with spam. So I wouldn't
Yeah,
knock it totally.
yeah. Where's the best place for everybody to connect with you?
The best place is at my website at traceegarner.com. That's
Okay,
Tracy with two E's. I am also on Instagram. I have a YouTube channel and I'm on Facebook.
okay, that's great. I'll make sure it's all in the show notes. Thank you for so much for being on the show today.
Thank you. Take care.
To all of you listening, thank you for joining us on this episode of the Inclusive Dad Podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, rate, or review the show. Your feedback helps us connect with more champions of inclusion. Remember to share this podcast with friends and family who might benefit. If you want to support us in our mission, please click on the link in the show description. Together we can make the world more inclusive. Until next time, stay empowered and be a champion for inclusion.